There's sometimes a very thin line between arrogance and confidence. Honestly, I enjoy the leadership of a confident leader, and in almost every situation that calls for leadership, a confident leader is usually more effective than a leader who is not confident but is competent. I don't know if you've ever had that experience. I have an idea that you probably have. The other side of that coin is when it slides over from confident to arrogant. There, it's there's an old country western song, "Detour, there's a muddy road ahead." That there are problems when leaders become arrogant, when they slip over or stride over from confident to arrogant. Well, you don't have to be a leader for that to be a problem. Any one of us who move from a confidence in what God is doing and a confidence in His grace, even a confidence in what we know in partnership with Him that we can address and we can go head on after. There's a big difference between that and an arrogance that says, "Oh well, hey, I can take it. I can do that." That's not any, that's the Barney. I call that the Barney Fife syndrome. Peter actually talks about people that are like that. And this is in 2 Peter chapter 2. We're in the last part of verse 10. Bold and arrogant. He describes these people who judgment is reserved for the ungodly. And then he goes on to describe them. Bold and arrogant. They're not afraid to heap abuse on celestial beings. Yet even angels, although they are stronger and more powerful, don't forget, angels are not these beatific little cherubic things. You put an angel on top of your Christmas tree, do that. It's worth doing that for. But instead of them having a harp, they should have a sword. And I mean a flaming, gleaming sword, because the angels are the warriors of heaven. Okay, I keep moving. Even angels, although they are stronger and more powerful, do not heap abuse on such beings when bringing judgment on them from the Lord. But these people blaspheme in matters they do not understand. Here's the thing. Most of us don't understand as much as we think we understand. And there are people, bold and arrogant people, who act as though they get it all. They know, and their opinions, their behaviors, whatever they're doing, wherever they're going is fully justified because, well, that's just how smart they are. Wrong. None of us are that smart. To me, when I read this, well, first of all, I don't want to be in that category of bold and arrogant. In the book of Hebrews, the Hebrew writer says that we can come boldly to the throne of grace. So I want to be able to do that. But when boldness moves over into arrogance, I don't want to be that guy. And honestly, there are times when I have been. Periods of my life when I was less mature, and I'm still so very much on the journey of maturity, but immature people tend toward arrogance. Boldness, confidence, okay, I kind of want that. And I kind of want it for you too. But not arrogance. Arrogance just doesn't do anybody any good. Well, these bold and arrogant people who they're heaping abuse on celestial beings, and these people blaspheme in matters they do not understand. Probably need to talk about what blasphemy is. Blasphemy is, in our culture, covers a whole bunch of things. And usually we take the term blaspheme and blasphemy and we slide it over into categories where it probably doesn't really belong. To blaspheme is a very characteristically religious idea. It means to assign something false to deity, or to assign an action or an outcome or a character to deity that is not theirs. So the kind of blasphemy and Old and New Testament both talk about blasphemy. Blasphemy is a defamation of the character of the divine. Jesus talks about a sin that he identifies as blasphemy of the Holy Spirit, which there's a whole lot of opinion associated with that. If you study that phrase, whatever the bottom line on that is, it is somehow that it's a defamation of the character of the Holy Spirit. There are people in our world who this idea of blasphemy never gets on their radar because first of all, they don't really abide by the idea that there is deity. They are humanists in its strictest sense, that we are God. We are the authority. It's us. And in itself, can you see that is a form of blasphemy? If I take for myself a characteristic that truly only belongs to God, that's blasphemy. Well, see, here's the thing. These people, in their ignorance, these people blaspheme in matters they do not understand. Most of them think they do. Now it's easy. I mean, I can throw rocks in lots of different directions at people who, from my observation, they fit this category. Here's the thing, though. This would be a much better application of what is there. I don't ever want to even edge toward that in my thinking and my behaving. And I wouldn't want that for you either. So each of us ought to look into our own hearts and our own lives, and when we even sniff this arrogance, this tendency to think we got it. The problem is you are never more than a breath away from blaspheming when that happens. See, can't emphasize this enough. I think it is virtually impossible to blaspheme without arrogance, and equally difficult for the arrogant to not blaspheme. And so if I don't want to blaspheme, I don't want to be guilty of that, then I also have to look at, what about arrogance in my life? I struggle with this. I don't want to. I want to be this humble guy, and I want to see myself through the lens of God's design. I want to be realistic about who I truly am and what I'm capable of, right? But I grew up believing that I had to think less of myself, or I had to think of myself as being less in order to achieve any sort of humility. And humility, honestly, this is true. The antidote for the kind of arrogance that I'm talking about is humility. And the example of Christ is an example of a humble man, though if anyone could have been arrogant. because think of it. What was he not capable of? There was nothing that Jesus was not capable of, in my opinion. But he was humble in spite of what he was capable of. Me, I have very limited capabilities, and sometimes in spite of that, I am arrogant. I am learning how and making efforts in partnership with the Holy Spirit to mortify that arrogance. Okay. They blaspheme in matters they do not understand. And then he goes on, he's pretty harsh. They're like unreasoning animals, creatures of instinct, born only to be caught and destroyed. And like animals, they too will perish. Okay, here's a strong reality. We're all going to perish. All of us. If we lose track of that, we'll never be able to sustain humility. When we realize we're all temporary, that's a pretty significant piece of the picture, the puzzle for men and women of genuine humility. Men and women who are not bold and arrogant, but who have a sane estimate of themselves and live in humility, which is the antidote. It's the opposite of the people that Peter is describing here. When we, this is an area of, I guess I would say, I kind of have a hobby horse about this. When we believe that as human beings we're just another animal, we're in trouble. Peter here says these bold and arrogant people who they blaspheme about things that they don't understand, they are like unreasoning animals, and they work off of instinct, and really their function in life is to be born so that they can be killed and used as food, destroyed, to be like animals. We're not just other animals. Yeah, I suppose in the broadest sense of the word, because we live and breathe, animals also live and breathe. Yes, we have that in common. And honestly, even on a DNA level, we have a whole lot in common with certain of the animals. But we are not just animals. We are, the psalmist says, we're made a little lower than the angels. And he doesn't say that about any of the other created beings on earth. We're not just animals. But if we live in this bold and arrogant way, and we disregard truth, we blaspheme about things that we don't understand, we put ourselves in the same category as cows, right? I mean, cows don't reason. That's why you can put a cattle guard across the gateway of a property, and cattle aren't going to cross over it. If cattle could reason better, they would figure out there's ways to get across that. But they don't have their brain is not constructed with that particular part that can reason in that way. Okay, don't just be cattle. All right. He goes on. They will be paid back with harm for the harm they have done. Their idea of pleasure is to carouse in broad daylight. They are blots and blemishes, reveling in their pleasures while they feast with you. With eyes full of adultery, they never stop sinning. They seduce the unstable. They're experts in greed, an accursed brood. They have left the straight way and wandered off to follow the way of Balaam, son of Bezer, who loved the wages of wickedness. But he was rebuked for his wrongdoing by a donkey, an animal without speech, who spoke with a human voice and restrained the prophet's madness. Well, my time is already up, so we're going to have to come back to that whole narrative, but the point is pretty easy to see. This is serious. This is serious business. Okay. We'll have to go with more of this serious business next time when we get together on Soul Care with Stevie Boy.